right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a very busy news day, a Wednesday, at 107.1 FM, 1400 AM KSHP, and streaming live video, audio everywhere. Pretty busy news cycle over the last 24 hours. Donald Trump, third time, and as on the hour. But to get the other side of it right now, I wanted to catch up with the man who is the executive editor of Occupy Democrats. I've seen him on Newsmax. I don't know how he does it, by the way, but he does a pretty good job. And Grant Stern joins us right now. Grant, thank you so much for coming on with us. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Brian. Can you hear me okay out there?
I can hear you great, Grant. You sound great, loud and clear. Let me ask you this First of all. What was your first reaction when you saw the indictment and you read the indictment, which I imagine you did, the third indictment now of Donald Trump? What were your thoughts on it?
Wow, my thoughts were wow. This is what I expected, but I expected maybe a while back. But to put it all together, streamline it, and it still be 45 pages, and for them to go soup to nuts, how these guys came up with a plan. They saw that their first plan wasn't going to work, and how they departed from Plan A off into crazy land. That was stunning to watch. How they pinpointed it. There's no ambiguity. Everybody thinks, well, this is wrong. What happened here is bad. What about this court precedent, First Amendment? No, this really lays it out step by step by step. It shows you how it was a three-pronged conspiracy with six main people in the middle of it. Everybody else was there and helping, but these were the people who were moving everything forward. So,
and Grant, if you hear the argument from the right, including some of Donald Trump's own attorneys, they talk about his First Amendment rights. They talk about freedom of speech. They talk about how it's a two-tiered justice system. And they want to talk about Hunter Biden's laptop. I mean, what do you say to those people?
It is a two-tiered justice system. If Donald Trump was anybody else, he would have been charged with this a lot sooner. And a lot of the other things that he did as well. I mean, there's a lot of distractions out there with a private citizen who has no government role, whose laptop was, turned into a public spectacle. But that has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with somebody trying to remain the president of the United States when they've lost the election, and telling the person whose job it is to ceremonially count the votes that they're too honest.
Yeah.
Can somebody in that role be too honest? Richard Nixon counted the votes that ended his first run for president. Al Gore counted the votes that ended his run for president in 2020. And there was a legitimate, genuine legal dispute. I'm sorry, in 2000. There was a genuine legal dispute in 2000. Here, the legal disputes were disposed of long before the scheme was pushed into its final, most dangerous phase. And many of the co-conspirators acknowledged that this was going to be a bloody coup.
Let's talk about that. One of those co-conspirators listed in the indictment is Rudy Giuliani. He had a meltdown on Newsmax. I don't know if you saw it, but a complete meltdown.
Oh, when? Was that today?
Yeah, this was earlier this morning. Just a meltdown.
Okay.
And, he's throwing papers and talking about, again, freedom of speech. And this is an attack on our former president. And it's a witch hunt. This is the same talking points that Donald Trump basically says. Do you think any of these co-conspirators will testify against Donald Trump and will cooperate?
So I think that there's a strong chance that some of these co-conspirators are already cooperating against Donald Trump. I mean, there's already a Newsmax report that Mike Roman was cooperating, and he is generally believed to be number 6. The sixth co-conspirator that everybody's like, who is that guy? But yeah, I mean, all these people can be indicted. All these people could face charges, and all of them are probably pretty well aware of it by now as well.
Do you agree with me that a fundamental difference between some Democrats and some Republicans today, I bring up Mitch McConnell, right? And
Sure.
I bring up the medical episode that he had last week. What does Joe Biden do? He picks up the phone and he calls him, not to attack him, calls him to see how he's doing. Democrats across the country wishing him well, thoughts and prayers. Yeah, you're always going to get some trolls that are going to say some not so nice things that are not that are not appropriate. But for the most part, people in office, Democrats, they're wishing Mitch McConnell well, him and his family. And then I look at a guy like Fetterman or Feinstein or Fetterman, who has a stroke, and people are elected officials calling him a vegetable, making fun of his speech impediments. I just think it's a fundamental difference and a lack of empathy on one side compared to the other.
Well, I agree with you that it is a lack of empathy on one side, but it's also this the reduction of everything into negative partisanship. You know, when you've got nothing to offer, then everything has to be an attack. And Democrats struggled with that kind of thing for years too, where everything was an attack, but they didn't have a lot to offer. And then starting in 2017, they built a platform of something to offer. In 2018, 19, and 20, even though they didn't have the legislative majorities, the Democratic House passed a series of bills intended to be a platform, and that platform became a lot of what Joe Biden ran on. Republicans haven't had a platform in a long time. Conservatism Inc. has shown that it's bankrupt. It's an idea with some parts that have been tried and failed, like trickle-down economics, and other parts that are simply not going to ever succeed. But they just, they're basically like, think of it like a movie franchise that's just doing fan service, right?
Yeah.
And the fans of the Republican Party are billionaires, they're corporations, they want tax cuts, they want less regulations, they want some very specific deliverables for the very large donations they get. Right. And so, they have to turn everything into negative everything because they got nothing else.
And let's
that's
talk
really
more
shameful.
about that. Yeah, and I agree with you. And let's talk more about that. By the way, if you're just joining us, he's Grant Stern, the executive editor of Occupy Democrats, also the authors of MTC 2020 series of books, some great books. Definitely check those out. All right, Grant. So you were on Newsmax the other day, right? And you're trying to make the case, and I thought you make it very well, even though you were interrupted, about some of the Joe Biden accomplishments. You know that constantly on the right, whether it be Newsmax or Fox News, the Sean Hannitys, the Mark Levins, the Laura Ingrams, they think the sky is falling with Joe Biden. He's the worst president. He's ruined the country. But what they don't want to hear is facts. And I'm not going to interrupt you like Newsmax. Can you please make the case to the MAGAs out there and the people on the extreme right that don't want to hear the facts of the actual Joe Biden accomplishments and the record that he can campaign on?
Well, let's start with Bidenomics. You have three prongs to what people want when it comes to the economy. Okay, you want high employment, low inflation, and you want real wage growth. The economy today, as it sits, has all of those things, despite interest rates going up from 0.5% to 5%. That's an enormous jump. Every time the Fed raises interest rates, the value of every commercial property drops. It becomes more expensive to borrow. And despite all of that, we've found this Goldilocks economy, and it's not some accidental thing. We have an industrial policy in the United States for the first time in decades, where we're supporting chip makers. We're building our infrastructure back. All of these are Democratic initiatives. In particular, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is an enormous down payment towards fixing our society's climate change problems. That's another one that's creating green infrastructure. You're talking about charging stations that are not going to lock people into one car company or another, for electric vehicles to be rolled out massively nationwide. All of these things are contributing to a healthy economy with robust fundamentals that we haven't seen in this country in a long time. We've seen a lot of swings. We've seen a lot of manipulation. When you cook the books like the Bushes did, you shoot the stock prices up really high. Everybody parties for a little while, and then it crashes. When you stop regulating everything, when you step aside and let all the crypto scammers steal everything in sight, somebody's going to have a party. There's going to be some fun. Stock market might go up like a sugar high, then it crashes back down. But what we've seen is the stock market is above where it was at the beginning of last year, despite all of the very strong interest rate increases. It's still growing. This is a really strong economy, and Joe Biden really has a stake in it. This is not like Donald Trump, who only passed a single economic bill in 4 years, and that was a tax cut. And that tax cut did not add anything to America's bottom line. Okay, it fattened the wallets of corporations, and now it's raising taxes on the middle class of Americans. So right now you have a Republican Party that's like, hey, we're going to try and crash the global economy. We got downgraded by Fitch yesterday, the ratings service, because of Republicans being in control of the House of Representatives. They have no policy. There's no end game to crashing the system. There's no end game to making tremendous cuts to federal spending. The only end game is just pure politics for them. So Joe
Yeah.
Biden has done a lot of things that are directly impacting the economy. Normally,
Agree.
you can't say the president did this, the president did that, but this is not one of those cases. He's the most impactful president since LBJ when it comes to legislation and changing the way that the government is working.
Mhm.
That's a very long gap.
Agree with you 100%. All right. With that being said, though, Grant, full disclosure, I'm a registered independent, even though I lean to the left on social issues. And I can tell you right now, I would vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump in a heartbeat. And I know there's many people that agree with me that are independents. It's not like they voted for Biden in 2020 and all of a sudden they're saying, geez, I think I'm going to vote for that orange guy. It's just not going to happen. But let me ask you this, though.
Doubt it.
Yeah, correct. But let me ask you this, though. There are a lot of Democrats out there and even independents that are anti-Trump that would agree with me that they don't really want to see Joe Biden run again. It's not because I think he's this bad guy, and it's not because I think he's this bad president, because I don't. And you named some of those accomplishments. I just think he might be a little bit too old. So is Donald Trump, by the way. But I wouldn't vote for Trump not because he's old, just because of all the other things surrounding him. But how do you feel about that? As someone, again, who is the executive editor of Occupy Democrats, my question isn't, would you vote for Biden over Trump? I know who you would vote for, and I would vote for Biden as well. But do you really want him to run again? I guess that's my question for you.
Now, let's just start by saying nobody should hold Biden's opponents' inexperience and youth against them. Mm-hmm. But no, listen, Joe Biden has the experience. There's a lot of talk out there, but the reality is that if you want to hand the presidency over to Donald Trump, all you have to do is just oppose Joe Biden. Joe Biden is not a one-man team, okay? He didn't get there he did not get to where he is as a one-man band, right? It's a team of people. You're not just voting for one guy. You're voting for a party. You're voting for thousands of appointees. You're voting for the judges that he's going to appoint. This is not a one-man show. Just because one man is the face of it doesn't mean that you should consider this a one-person vote. And anybody who is his running mate is going to be a better president than the Republicans have to offer for the reasons that we've just talked about. The Democrats have a policy that is for America and for Americans, not for corporations, which have a significant amount of foreign ownership, not for 1,000 families that are in the top 0.01% of America's wealth triangle, right? So This is not a race that's about one person, and it's not just about age. And I'll tell you right now, Joe Biden is not 25 years old. He's not 35 years old, but he ain't 85 either. He can still do this. He may not serve the whole term. You don't know. We cannot know for sure. But he's not going to be the oldest person to ever serve as a head of state.
Would you be comfortable with our vice president right now running the show, being the president of the United States?
Absolutely. If necessary, Kamala Harris has extensive experience. She led the California Department of Justice. That's an executive role. The California DOJ is the second largest DOJ in the country, right? She understands the legalities of what the president wants to do and how to accomplish things. She's a brilliant woman, and she is ready for the job. I mean, I'm not saying that, my first choice would be Kamala and second Joe Biden, but if it comes down, comes down to shove, she is prepared for the job.
Well, listen, if it's Harris versus Trump, I would still vote for Harris. She's not a top 20 pick for me, but I would still, let me be clear, I would still do that. I understand you're a Democrat, and I understand you're probably more to the left than I am, but I still want to ask you this question. There are some Republicans that I would support. There are some Republicans that are not running, but if they did run, I could vote for them. Because I think they're decent human beings, whether it be an Adam Kinzinger or a Mitt Romney that I don't agree with on a lot of issues. Chris Christie took too long to finally speak out against Trump, but at least better late than ever. There are some Republicans that I say, okay, I could maybe see myself voting for them. I know you're a Democrat. Are there any Republicans out there that you would say, geez, maybe I could see myself voting for that person?
In the current field, you're talking about in the current field, not out there, period.
Not just the current field, because it's not that big. I'm just saying in general, Republicans that are in office right now that aren't even running for president. But is there anybody out there that you would say, I could see myself maybe supporting that person. Doesn't even have to be running for president. I'm just curious if there are any Republicans out there that you admire that maybe you would support.
Look, there are Republicans out there that I have esteem for because they've done the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
People like Liz Cheney, who put America before her political career. People like Adam Kinzinger, people like Mitt Romney, people that have spoken some truth to power within their party.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't necessarily translate into I would vote for them, because they would still do things politically, like, fighting the access to health care,
mm-hmm.
or, favoring wealthy people over middle-class people in the tax code that I strongly disagree with. So, I mean, some of them, I mean, look, Mitt Romney is a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I respect that a lot, because that's not something that's easy for a Republican to do.
Agree.
Republicans who are honest, who tell the truth, who are not twisting everything for political reasons, they can be respected. I mean, Chris Christie was elected in New Jersey twice because of the reaction to whatever the Democrats in New Jersey, the state party, had done. And he was elected for a reason. Did he responsibly steward the office at all times? I would say not. And you see, that's unfortunate. But this is the reality. I'm a realist when it comes to all of this.
I hear you.
And I'll tell you, those books that you mentioned were all about the 2020 Democratic candidates. So I wrote a book about Pete Buttigieg, a book about Kamala Harris, a book about Joe Biden. I dug into everything. I went into the archives. I started from scratch. And I can just honestly tell you that even if they make a mistake, there's a one-off, there's something I disagree with, overall, I can trust that they're going to do what I want them to do. And I think most Americans can wake up and say that. There's very few Americans that wake up and say we should, hurt the economy, make people sicker, and we should run a foreign policy that's in line with the worst dictators of the world. But unfortunately, the majority of Republican candidates are kind of in that sector. And even the ones that would say, well, I don't think we should agree with Putin, would still want to restrict healthcare. And that includes somebody like Mitt Romney, who created Obamacare when he was the governor of Massachusetts, but now opposes it. And we've seen too much of that. Somebody was telling me at a party, just a random person, no political knowledge whatsoever, how it was both parties' fault in Washington that immigration wasn't fixed. And I said, but is it one party or is it the other party? She goes, oh, no, it's both parties. It's Washington that's the problem. And I'm like, how do you know that? Well, I just know. I'm like, what do you read? Oh, I don't read anything. What do you watch? I don't watch anything. I'm like, how do you know this? Right? I'm like, do you know that Senator Marco Rubio helped pass a bipartisan immigration reform when Obama was in office? And Democrats were ready to vote for it. And then he voted against his own bill, shot it down, and killed it. And you see, that's the problem.
We just have... Well, they're hypocrites. Yeah. Let's just call it what it is. Many of the Republicans that are in office today are hypocrites.
It goes beyond hypocrisy. They're sold out. That's what selling out looks like there.
They've sold out. Many of them have sold out to Donald Trump. They've kissed the ring of Donald Trump for years. I still don't understand why they're doing that. The leader of their party is now a third indicted former president of the United States. Before I let you go, I have to ask you this. Do you think that Donald Trump will be convicted of any crimes before the 2024 presidential election?
Every single crime he's put on trial for, I predict he will be convicted for. These people did not bring frivolous indictments. When you come for the king, you gotta get them. And
we'll see.
The sad thing is, the only question is really, will Republican convention goers take that into account or not?
Well, it's going to be an interesting year and a half, that's for sure. You guys do a great job there at Occupy Democrats. Grant Stern,
thanks,
we'd love to have you on again down the road. And I really appreciate you coming on, Grant. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the show, and follow me on all the social media platforms at Grant Stern.
You're a great follow, and that's the reason why you have hundreds of thousands of followers. Grant Stern, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you so much. All right, we get the best of both worlds here now, right? Because, we just had Grant Stern, the executive editor, Occupy Democrats, talking about, the Trump indictment and his thoughts. And now we have a man on the line with us right now who is